Imagine a world where one of the most important foods in human history never existed. No potatoes growing beneath the soil, no steaming bowls of mashed potatoes, no golden, crispy French fries sizzling in oil, no potato chips sold in every store, no comforting baked potatoes topped with butter. It may seem like a small change, a minor absence in the grand scheme of things, but the effects of a world without the potato would be profound. The course of history would be altered. Economies would have evolved differently. Wars might have been lost or won by different nations, and entire populations may never have existed. The potato is more than just food. It has been a silent force shaping civilizations, driving population booms, feeding armies, sustaining industrial growth, and even causing mass migrations. If the potato had never been cultivated, the world today would be smaller, hungrier, and fundamentally different in ways we can barely imagine. Centuries ago, high in the Andes Mountains of South America, the potato was first domesticated by the Incas. This seemingly simple tuber had a remarkable quality. It could grow in poor soil, thrive in cold climates, and provide an abundance of calories and nutrients. For the Incas, it was more than just food. It was a staple of survival, an essential crop that allowed them to build a powerful empire in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But if the potato had never been discovered, what would have happened to these early civilizations? Would the Incan Empire have grown as strong as it did, or would hunger and agricultural limitations have prevented it from reaching its height? Would European conquest have happened differently? And if so, how would the Spanish Empire have developed without the wealth and resources of the New World? When Spanish conquistadors arrived in South America in the 16th century, they were looking for gold and silver, but they unknowingly found something even more valuable. They brought the potato back to Europe, but at first, it was met with suspicion and rejection. Many Europeans believed it was poisonous, as it belonged to the nightshade family, a group of plants that includes toxic species. Some thought it caused diseases like leprosy, while others saw it as an inferior peasant food. For decades, it remained an oddity, grown in small amounts but never widely accepted. But famine has a way of changing minds. As Europe's population grew and food supplies struggled to keep up, people began to realize that the potato had an advantage over other staple crops. It produced more food per acre than wheat or barley. It could grow in poor soil, and it was resistant to many common plant diseases. Slowly, governments across Europe began to push for its cultivation. In Prussia, Frederick the Great famously ordered his people to plant potatoes, even using military force to ensure compliance. In Russia, Catherine the Great encouraged widespread potato farming, despite resistance from peasants who saw it as unnatural. In France, Antoine-Augustin Parmentier, a French scientist, conducted public campaigns to promote the potato, staging elaborate feasts where he served dishes made entirely from the tuber to convince the nobility of its value. Without the potato, Europe's population would have grown at a much slower rate. Cities would have remained smaller, industrial progress delayed, and many people who lived because of the potato would have never been born. The Industrial Revolution, which fueled the rise of modern civilization, might have been set back by decades or even centuries. The potato was essential to feeding factory workers in England, Germany, and France, who migrated from the countryside to work in rapidly expanding cities. A world without the potato is a world where industrialization happens much later, where machines replace human labor at a slower pace, and where technological advancements do not come as quickly as they did. The absence of the potato would also have reshaped warfare. Napoleon's armies marched on potatoes, using them as a staple food to keep soldiers strong during long campaigns. During World War I and II, potatoes were critical to feeding armies and civilians alike. Without them, food shortages would have been even more severe, making prolonged wars harder to sustain. The outcomes of battles, entire wars, and even geopolitical power balances could have shifted drastically if soldiers had weaker food supplies and if nations were unable to provide for their people. The British, the Germans, the Russians all relied on the potato to keep their war efforts alive. Perhaps one of the most striking historical events tied to the potato is the Irish potato famine. In the 1840s, Ireland became almost entirely dependent on potatoes. When potato blight struck in 1845, wiping out crops across the country, over 1 million people starved to death, and another million fled their homeland, many of them emigrating to the United States, Canada, and Australia. If the potato had never existed, this tragedy would not have unfolded in the same way. But Ireland may have remained a much smaller, weaker nation, never experiencing the population boom that led to its heavy reliance on the crop in the first place. The mass emigration that shaped the Irish diaspora and helped build nations like the US might never have happened. The world's cultural and demographic landscape would be entirely different. Even outside of Europe, the potato changed the world. It spread to China, India, and Africa, helping to sustain billions of people as populations exploded in the 19th and 20th centuries. Without it, alternative staple crops like rice, wheat, and maize would have had to compensate, but they are less efficient and require more land and water to grow. Would these nations have developed as rapidly? Would famines have been more frequent? And would poverty have been deeper and longer lasting? The absence of the potato might have meant entirely different economic structures in some of the world's most powerful countries today. And what about modern food culture? Without the potato, fast food, as we know it, might never have taken off. No French fries, no potato chips, no hash browns at breakfast tables worldwide. McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, all built massive global empires with French fries as one of their signature foods. The fast food industry might have had to rely on different side dishes, changing the way people eat and even altering the global economy of food production. Looking into the future, the potato remains one of the world's most important crops. It is a staple in efforts to combat world hunger, and scientists are working on genetically modified potatoes that can survive in extreme conditions. NASA has even conducted experiments to grow potatoes on Mars, recognizing their potential as a survival crop for future space colonies. If humans ever settle on another planet, the first crop they grow may not be wheat or rice. It may be the potato. A world without the potato would be a world where hunger remained a greater enemy for much longer, where nations rose and fell on different timelines, where cities grew more slowly and wars played out with different victors. The food we eat, the way we work, the nations that dominate global power, and even the people alive today would all be different. It is impossible to know exactly how history would have changed, but one thing is certain: this small, unassuming vegetable shaped the modern world in more ways than we will ever know.